This is a portrait of a country called America, which prides itself on freedom. But now it finds itself perpetually hungry, with freedom being slowly removed from its diet. And to rationalize that their world is okay, they just say, USA. Is America turning into a police state? Have we been taken over by a foreign entity under stealth? Or is America in the Twilight Zone? The United States has 5% of the world's population, yet it almost has a quarter of the world's prisoners. Now that's because Americans are locked up for writing bad checks, using drugs. In other countries, they wouldn't even consider it. And Americans are kept in prison longer. During the Boston bombing, Americans were forced out of their homes at gunpoint. They had 9,000 cops looking for 2 teenagers. Ridiculous. But we'll get back to Boston bombing later. Children of today are trained to be slaves, to be scared of guns. Mind games are played on them. The next clips clearly illustrate this.
I walked on top of it and it kind of looked like a gun, but it wasn't.
Across the nation tonight, he said he meant no harm, but that young boy's school didn't see it that way. You see, Josh there was munching on a strawberry Pop-Tart at his elementary school in Baltimore when he said it started to resemble the shape of a gun. And he pointed it in the air, and that was too much for the boy's teacher. So the boy's father got a phone call and couldn't believe what he heard.
And she said that they had to suspend Josh for 2 days because he used his breakfast pastry and fashioned it as a gun.
Josh says he was trying to turn his Pop-Tart into a mountain lion, not a gun. School officials are being tight-lipped about the whole thing, citing privacy concerns. The boy, by the way, is expected to be allowed back to class later this week.
Called to tell him their daughter,
my baby girl,
was getting expelled from her elementary school.
Thought she was kidding at first.
McKinney's 6-year-old daughter, Naomi, brought a toy gun to school. Not much bigger than this one. The toy she brought was broken and even held together by duct tape.
School called to say she was acting out. He went to pick her up and instead found at the police station.
She was shackled. I mean, this is a 7-year-old, 8. I'm barely made 8. I mean, and to me, I feel like that was above and beyond.
Well, the police department says it had no choice in that case because it was, quote, necessary to protect her by restraining her. But her uncle is now homeschooling her.
On 20th, Rodney was involved in a, quote, serious incident in which he threatened to shoot a student.
Did you ever do that?
No.
Rodney says his trouble started earlier that day.
I went into my desk and then I got scissors and then I just pretended it was a gun.
He was sent to the office, then later sent again for something similar. He says then his teacher sent him a 3rd time when a friend did this.
Just pointing her fingers like this, and then she did the pow sound and I just went like that. And then I got sent to the office again.
He says one of them went overboard.
He yelled at me and said that I shouldn't have never brought the gun to school, and I kept telling him that it was a paper gun, but he wouldn't listen.
Why did he threaten my daughter? Why did you stand over my daughter and tell her that you should call the cops on her? You can be arrested. Why were you trying to scare her?
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
With a police state growing, you need a tattletale society. So we're being trained to turn each other in.
Inside this home on Goldstaff Lane, the woman who lives here called Charlotte Mecklenburg police about her Pop-Tarts. She said they'd been stolen, and she fingered her own son as the culprit. As you might expect, neighbors were stunned beyond words. What do you think?
Insaneness is all around us. I mean, if I told you that our government was torturing people, you wouldn't believe me.
has found it indisputable, in their words, that the United States has engaged in the practice of torture since 9/11. They say the highest officials in our country bear responsibility and share responsibility for it. The report says torture has damaged the standing of our nation, on top of potentially increasing the danger to U.S. military personnel taken captive. On top of all of it, the commission found no evidence that torture ever yielded any key information, no information that we are any safer because...
Another article on torture. Get More is killing me. This guy, he's gone on a hunger strike since February 10th. He's lost over 30 pounds. And he will not eat until they restore his dignity. He's been in prison for 11 years and 3 months and never been charged with a crime. On March 15th, he was sick in the hospital and refused to eat. A squad of 8 military police officers in riot gear burst in and they tied his hands and feet to the bed and forcibly inserted IV into his hand. He spent 26 hours in this state, tied to a bed. He was not permitted to go to the toilet. They inserted a catheter. He was also subjected to force feeding, where they stick the tube down your throat. Very painful. I'm going to play you a clip of the mainstream media to confirm this story.
Bay, where 100 of 166 prisoners are on a hunger strike, some since February. Their lawyers say they're protesting years of detention, most without being charged, and no release in sight. Extra doctors and nurses arrived today to help force feed 21 of the detainees. This despite the American Medical Association's protest to Defense Secretary Hagel that force feeding, quote, violates core ethical values of the medical profession once a prisoner makes a rational decision to refuse food.
Force feeding is torture. Well, heck, the next thing we hear is, what, the U.S. Army going to attack the American people?
U.S. Army labels evangelical Christians and Catholics as religious extremists. Well, we decided to take a closer look behind that headline.
What we're looking for right now is a suspect consistent with the description of suspect number 2.
We're asking people to shelter in place, in other words, to stay indoors with their doors locked and not to open the door for anyone other than a properly identified law enforcement officer.
I'm sure you remember this clip when the police were playing like they really didn't know who the suspects were.
Somebody out there knows these individuals as friends, neighbors, co-workers, or family members of the suspects. Though it may be difficult, the nation is counting on those with information to come forward and provide it to us.
But the police were playing like they really didn't know who the suspects were when they really did know. And I have the proof right here. Listen to this clip, and this is where they paid them money. They knew who they were all the time.
Words of one Massachusetts official, the Zarnaev family benefited from a stunning amount of public assistance. More than $100,000 of taxpayer money went to support the accused Boston bombers and their parents. The Boston Herald revealed the new details. Benefits for the Zarnaev brothers and their parents included such things as cash, food stamps, and Section 8 housing over a decade from 2002 to 2012. And the older of the two brothers, Tamerlane Zarnaev, received more than $5,500 in financial aid for college. The new details are part of 500 documents handed over to a Massachusetts state committee investigating the amount of benefits the Zarnaev family received. It's not clear whether any taxpayer dollars were used in planning and executing the actual bombing.
Most of the plots that you hear on TV are controlled and financed by the FBI, CIA, and they use this to take away our rights. The FBI later questioned the friend of the bomber to see if there was any connection, but the investigation went wrong and they ended up killing the guy. They said because he lunged at him with a knife and they felt threatened, so they had to take him out. That was the official story. But let's listen to the other side.
Because they appear to show that he was shot 6 times in the torso and once in the back of the head. The rear of his head, sort of at the crown of his head. How does that comport with the FBI's story that he was killed during questioning by armed agents who were only acting in self-defense? Shot 7 times, including in the back of the head?
The latest account of events from an unnamed US government official states that as the interview began, an officer moved a samurai sword out of Todashev's reach. He was then questioned for around 8 hours into the night. According to the account, one of the detectives noticed Todashev acting odd during the questioning and texted the FBI agent alongside him. Then suddenly, Todashev flipped over the table and pushed the agent against a wall before coming at him with a long-handled object. The agent fired several rounds while trying to stop him. Todashev's father said a photo of his body showed 6 bullet wounds to the torso and 1 to the back of his head.
Bottom line, our government will kill you if you don't agree with it. Watch this clip.
Reprehensible thread. They were planned, plotted, controlled, and carried out by the federal government itself. In all of these 17 cases, from the Fort Dix 6 to the Lackawanna 7 to the Portland Parade bomber, the feds found young men of Muslim backgrounds, loners who were bitter at America. They befriended them, cajoled them, and persuaded them that they could change the world by killing Americans. In all these cases, agents worked undercover and portrayed themselves to the targets as Arabs of like un-American mind. In some cases, the federal agents used third parties to act as middlemen. The third parties were typically persons who had been convicted of crimes and who, in return for leniency at their own sentencings, were willing to work with the same feds who prosecuted them in order to help the feds entrap whomever else those feds were pursuing.
USSR, 61,911,000 people killed.
Hitler's Germany, nearly 21 million people killed.
Japan's imperialism, nearly 6 million people killed.
Western colonization killed over 50 million people.
Pol Pot's Cambodia, funded by the U.S. government. 2 million people killed.
China's Communist Party, as many as 76 million people killed between 1949 and 1987.
And the list goes on and on. Demand to know why the Department of Homeland Security bought more than 1.6 billion hollow point bullets.
How many more people does government have to kill?
Your own federal government is plotting against you to take away your rights and enslave you. And by the way, waterboarding is not new. This has been going on for centuries. They're just imitating the past.
Zap incoming missiles, disrupt global communications, and engineer the weather. And ready? There's one more. Some people believe the technology being tested here could be used for sinister projects involving humans. Radio waves messing around with people's brain waves. And guess what? The military denies this one too.
Man is on a quest to play God, to control the weather and use it as a weapon. Lightning, torrential rains, hurricanes, targeted at the enemy.
The ultimate war is if you never have to fire a round and nobody ever knew you launched the fight.
Is it possible there have already been attacks using weather weapons?
Some people believe that Katrina was weather warfare at its most potent.
But how do we get from understanding extreme weather to making it do our bidding?
Earthquakes, tidal waves, those become the future of warfare.
This series investigates how the impossible is becoming possible and what it might mean in the future.
If an enemy could change the jet stream over North America, it could plunge North America into an ice age.
Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez has once again accused the United States of playing God. But this time it's Haiti's disastrous earthquake that he thinks the U.S. was behind. Spanish newspaper ABC quotes Chavez as saying that the U.S. Navy launched a weapon capable of inducing a powerful earthquake off the shore of Haiti. He adds that this time it was only a drill, and the final target is destroying and taking over Iran.
The U.S. Patent Office granted a patent to a Houston-based scientist
Dr. Bernard Eastlund, for an invention which Dr. Eastlund says could be used to change the weather. Dr. Eastlund says the invention could also be used to disrupt communications all over the world and might be used to destroy or deflect a missile attack.
There are reportedly a total of 5 known ionospheric heaters, including HAARP, in the world today. There are possibly 20 other ionospheric heaters in existence all over the world. December 2001. Scientists at NASA's Ames Research Center in Palo Alto, California make a discovery. In studying more than 100 earthquakes with magnitudes of 5.0 or greater, they find that almost all of them are preceded by electrical disturbances in the ionosphere. Could there be a connection to HAARP or a facility like it?
To say that HAARP can artificially excite the ionosphere in such a way to cause an earthquake, well, it alarms me.